Hello and welcome to It's 420 Wyoming. I'm your host, Red Hawk. Thank you for joining me. Wyoming Normal is hosting a special guest speaker on the 20th day of each month at 4:20 p.m. So tune in. Let's talk Wyo Gives, an initiative of the Wyoming Nonprofit Network that is a powerful statewide 24-hour online fundraising event designed to raise funds and awareness for Wyoming's nonprofits. Since its launch in 2020, Wyo Gives has raised over $14 million for organizations across the state that provide essential services. So save the date, 16 July, and give to Wyoming Normal Foundation because education is key. My guest today is an avid Wyoming cannabis advocate, Rhonda Barth. Thank you for having
Hi,
us. Oh, thank you for being here.
my pleasure.
So, can you tell me a little bit about yourself?
Well, I am a widow of a Vietnam veteran, Bill, and I was his caretaker for 15 and a half years. We moved to Wyoming 30 years ago. He didn't make quite 30, and we love living in Wyoming.
Hmm.
So,
Well, that's very interesting. That's very interesting. Thank you for your service.
oh, yeah,
Um,
sure.
so do you ever use cannabis?
Oh, yes, myself, I do. I have back injuries.
Ooh, does it help?
Oh, definitely. I can I can use a little bit of cannabis and I can go out and do my yard work with minimal pain and it and I can how what do I say? Um I can function where if I do an opiate, the last time I took an opiate, I slept from 2 o'clock in the afternoon till 6 o'clock the next morning. And that's not
Hmm.
life. That's not functioning. And I can't live that way. I have to be able to enjoy life at this point.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense. So, do you live in Wyoming?
Yes, I do.
So right now you're not able to get cannabis.
No, I am not. I am
Hmm.
stuck with opiates.
Hmm. How's that affected you?
It, number one, brings me down because you can't really do anything because you're so drugged up. Even my husband was on 600 milligrams of morphine a day until they decided to take it away. And that was in 2015. And that was an amazing transformation, to say the least.
Hmm. Wow. That's sad to hear. That's why I think we need to have medical cannabis.
Oh, I definitely agree. My husband, like I said, was on that much morphine in 2015. The VA basically told him that he had lived too long and that they were taking away his morphine, but never offered another option for pain relief. And his pain relief was neuropathy from diabetes. His diabetes went uncontrolled for years. We didn't know that he was a diabetic. And when he was diagnosed, he pegged their machine at 1200. And that's the amount that, I mean, sugar's that high, people die from that.
Mhm.
And when they decided not to give him any type of pain relief, we had to seek other options. And we sought the option of medical marijuana. He was very much against it because he was ex-law enforcement. But he was at the point that he would try anything. And it was on our anniversary that we were able to obtain a little bit just as a trial. And we couldn't believe my husband lost 125 pounds, brought his sugars under control, and lowered his diabetes medication and everything, and was able to at least get out and enjoy a little bit of life, which was for him was fishing.
Mhm. Mhm.
And then he lived 4.5 more years morphine free with just medical cannabis.
Wow.
Yeah.
And I love hearing stories of people who say that medical cannabis truly helped them in a way that
Yes,
they can't really replace with anything else.
exactly. And Wyoming needs to open their eyes, because there is proof. My husband is proof. And I know that there's other proof out there. It's just they're not seeking
Yeah.
because they've got their opiates, and
Mhm.
opiates kill people. And it's a known fact.
Yeah. I think at this point it is not reasonable what they're doing because they have the facts and they have the power to change, but they don't. So it's on them.
Yeah. And
And yeah, that's why we need to
that's
get a new
really a
referendum.
shame. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah, Wyoming, if not and I don't, recreational is kind of questionable, but definitely medical marijuana should be um, able to be obtained by anybody in Wyoming for medical reasons, such as back pain and neuropathy pain, because it does work very well for those two issues. And I know that because that was my husband and I.
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah. I think that as long as you have a doctor's note saying that you can take medical marijuana, I don't see the reason why you shouldn't be able to.
Exactly. That should be the best option for people in Wyoming. People, we should have a choice. God gave us every seed bearing plant that we would ever need.
Yeah.
So it's biblical that God gave us what we should be able to have. He made it. He gave it to us for pain issues back in the Bible in biblical times.
Yeah.
So it's only since we're big pharma in the what 50s, Nixon, I think it wasn't it that changed all that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah. I always like hearing about the history of marijuana because there's a deep
yes.
history in America,
Oh yes.
especially
You
how
know,
they used to use the hemp for several different things, and as well as the cannabis for medical use. And
yes.
then it
And
was outlawed.
yes. And hemp shouldn't even be outlawed because there's so many better things that we could use it for. They even have it now for housing, for siding, for
Yes.
housing and stuff. And
Hempcrete.
that, yes, exactly. What? So we should be able to have access to any of that for ourselves and for what it's like
Mhm.
I'm due to reside my house in the near future, and I would love to use hempcrete on it if I could.
Yes. Now, do you think people should be able to grow their own legal cannabis?
For medical purposes, sure.
Yeah, medical and recreational.
Well, recreational is kind of a whole different basket,
Yeah.
whole different beehive, you know.
Yeah.
Um, that would be kind of maybe a question for after to see how the medical goes first. But I would
Yeah.
say, yeah, I would say maybe I guess what does it take? 2 to 3 plants
Oh yeah, that's
to
good.
for your personal consumption. And I see no problem with that as long as it's kept under, behind closed doors. You don't want it out in the open.
Yes. That's
And,
that's the whole thing. That you have to keep it locked up.
yeah, and keep it out of the reach of kids
Yes.
but there are kids out there that I have seen that need it,
Mhm.
and the parents shouldn't be arrested or penalized for using something that works, especially for epileptic seizures and such.
Yeah. And I think eventually they'll have the perfect mix of THC and CBD that won't get you high, but will give you some of the medical benefits,
Yes.
which I think there's absolutely zero reason to ban that.
Yeah, exactly. I went to Israel in 2019 before my husband passed away, and our guide that we had, his son, was working in the medical field, and he said by, I think it was like in the next 5 years, there would be a cure for cancer using cannabis. And they have since come out with that.
Yeah. I think there needs to be more research done on cannabis because it
Oh,
really does
definitely.
have healing properties that people have not fully researched.
Definitely. Yeah, definite research needs to be done. We've got lab that they could open up to do research and stuff like that, but not
Yeah.
until it becomes something that we can have that, till I guess what Trump either deschedules it or Wyoming makes it legal.
Yeah. And I always like watching very old documentaries about cannabis that shows that people have been doing some research on cannabis for a very long time, but for some reason it always gets swept under the rug.
Yes. And why that just drives me crazy. It's like, it works, that there's, why not open it up so that people can try it? Give the people a choice
Mhm. Mhm.
versus, giving them only, well, this is what, we make this and you have to take this, or you don't.
Yeah. And I think at a certain point people began to demonize cannabis just because it was an easy thing to demonize
Yes.
because
And that,
there's a lot of smokers who give it a bad name.
yes. And that's really, well, that's like the rotten tomato in a basket. One bad apple, one bad tomato ruins the whole basket, ruins it for everybody.
Yeah.
And that's where we need to sweep that under the rug and give people a better chance to experiment
Yeah. And I think
and
it's
see what
important.
works.
Yeah, I think it's important to say that cannabis is not for everyone. Some
No,
people
it's not.
it makes them very paranoid.
Yes.
It's not good.
Yes. And some people it doesn't work so much for.
Yeah.
It just depends on your body and the system. Yeah, I know a couple of people that it doesn't do much for. I know one who recently, and she just got so paranoid. So yeah, it does do that. It's not for everybody, but neither is alcohol.
Yeah.
Neither is, other drugs that are out there. So that's
Yeah.
why we need to be able to have a choice to experiment and find out what works best for us.
Yeah. As you know, a lot of people are trying to get cannabis legalized across the whole United States because that would just make things so much easier.
Yes.
You know, right now you can't take cannabis from one state into another because so many of them have it outlawed.
Yeah.
And eventually it's going to be, some of the more rural areas that are growing cannabis and spreading it out throughout the whole United States.
Yeah.
And I'm surprised that that hasn't happened yet. And, I'm curious as to what that would look like.
You know, I bet you it is happening more than what you think. Kind of like California back in the day. So,
Yeah,
yeah, it I know of a couple people that have
yeah,
places
yeah.
not wanting to get in trouble for what I say. So, yeah.
But I think, there's a lot of money to be made in that. And a lot of people are eager to get into that business.
Exactly. And you know, the state of Wyoming would benefit wholeheartedly with all of that extra tax revenue and everything. We would be, yeah, sitting pretty.
Exactly.
And why they don't do that, it just is beyond me. You know,
Well,
if nothing else for the additional tax income and the revenue that can be made from that
mhm,
is should be right there. It should be
yeah.
done. But
And I know that they're spending a lot of money arresting smokers.
exactly. And that, to me, if it's personal use, they shouldn't. And if you have a medical card on you, you should be left alone,
Yeah,
maybe given a warning. But as long as you have a medical card, and even if you're from a different state and you come through to visit your friends or whatever, you shouldn't, that should not be an issue.
yeah. And people go to jail. They get 30 days in the hole and they lose their jobs over a little bit of cannabis. And that
And
does
they're
not seem
pronounced,
fair.
yeah, no, and they're pronounced criminals. They're
Hmm.
forced to plead guilty. I know another person who was it was more CBD, but I guess there was enough THC in it to make it illegal for Wyoming. And they arrested her and she had to plead guilty so that she could make it all go away in what, 7 years or a year or something like that. And that to me is stupidity.
Okay, we're going to go ahead and take a quick commercial break.
Okay.
Hello and welcome back to the podcast. I have a question for you. How can the average citizen go out there and advocate for legal cannabis?
I would say go door to door. We did the petitions a few years ago. Um, you know, that's a hard one. To answer, I wear my VA pin or my Agent Orange pin, and a lot of times I'll wear my marijuana leaf to go with it. And a lot of times people will ask me. Other than that, that's a hard one for me to answer. I don't know at this point.
Yeah, and I think that's what a lot of people are thinking, that they have no idea how to get out there and advocate for this, because it's such a touchy subject and you have to
And that,
be very careful.
exactly, exactly. And of course, law enforcement is a bit touchy on that subject here.
Hmm. And I hate to say it, but I think that they should just leave us alone.
I agree with that because, as long as we're not uh, being idiots. I mean, some people do alcohol and they kind of lose their
Yeah.
senses. Marijuana does not do that to you.
But
But
I think some cops do understand.
yes,
It depends on the cop. It really does.
yes. So yeah, that's,
But maybe they could get some kind of education about it, because I don't see why
that's,
not.
I don't see why not either. It should be legal for them to obtain. When we were doing the petitions, I had a gentleman say, I work for the federal government. I can't sign that. And it's like, why not? I mean, well, because it's illegal. And it's like, yeah, but we're trying to make it legal. And your signature would help. It should not affect your job. Why?
Yeah.
But apparently it does.
And we all have good intentions about getting cannabis legal, but sometimes people get caught in the crossfire and we need to be careful.
Yes.
And that's why, talking to some of these politicians and congressmen is that they have to keep a very squeaky clean record, especially working in the government.
Government's already corrupt as it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
They need to, yeah. They, I don't know. There's senators out there that have said there's no proof, it doesn't work. And it's like, you know what? You're a medical doctor. You should know better. And still, he says
Well,
there's no.
I think they lie about a lot of things.
Oh, yes. Yes. I had a friend of mine pass away from cancer last year. And when we went through, she had one treatment. And I talked to her oncologist and I says, I know it's illegal in Wyoming, but what are your thoughts? He says, yes, it is illegal. And I can't legally, but I can say if off, get as much as that stuff as you can and smoke as much as you can because it's about the only thing that's going to give you a chance. And of course, she passed away.
Yeah. And
Even doctors off the record are saying get it as much as you can. The last visit my husband made to the hospital in another state, they were very happy that he had been using medical marijuana and very surprised at how well he had done, being 4.5 years morphine free
yeah.
and able to function.
And another thing that I think should be studied is the rise of cancer rates in America.
Oh, yes.
It has exploded.
Yes.
I mean, you see all the commercials all the time
Correct.
for childhood cancer. Since when was that a
Yes.
thing? That is crazy to me.
That is crazy. And that kind of all started back when they started homogenizing milk. Milk has a natural ingredient that's a cancer fighting, but because of the cleanliness of the where the cows are, they had to start homogenizing milk to make it safer, supposedly for us to drink. So when you homogenize it, it kills off that ingredient, that enzyme that helps kill cancer, and
Hmm.
they put it back in using some kind of chemical. And my mother learned that from the Gerson Clinic in Mexico.
Yeah. And I think the best milk is milk that you can get from your farmer's market, whole milk.
Yes. And we have a place where I live here in Wyoming that has that. And yes, that's
Yep.
the best, healthiest milk that you can get.
Doesn't that milk just make you feel energized and just so much better?
For someone who would drink milk, yes, I currently don't drink milk.
I love milk. I love milk.
Yeah,
I
my
think it's
husband was a
delicious.
milk drinker. Yeah, I just have never, since I was a teenager, never liked milk. Just I quit drinking it.
Really?
Yeah, it
Oh,
just, yeah. It's
uh,
good on cereal. I'll buy it for cereal, but that's about it.
yeah. I think Wyoming is kind of a different place than the rest of the United States.
Oh, definitely. That's why we moved here.
Yeah,
We
there's
were
not.
originally from California, and yeah, we moved to what because Wyoming is like it was when I was a child. Down home, down to earth,
Hmm.
good community, good people.
Yeah, exactly. Everything just looks a little bit older when you walk around
Yes.
town.
Yeah.
The grocery stores are older. Everything is just a little bit older. Kind of like it's stuck in
Yeah.
the 80s.
Exactly. Yes. So it's nice. Yeah, we have our issues and different things that go on, but yeah, it's a nice place to live. I wouldn't want to live anywhere else.
It's a very nice place to live. And I think it would be the best place to live in America if they would just legalize cannabis.
Yes, everywhere would be better.
Yeah.
Yes, they do need to legalize it and just be done, you
Yeah.
know.
And Wyoming is a beautiful place. It has some of the cleanest air in all of the United States.
Yes,
You could just smell it when you go outside.
exactly. It's really nice, crisp, and beautiful, especially in the mornings. Mornings are my favorite.
Yeah, whenever there's not a huge fire going on.
Exactly, yeah. And so far, so good.
Whew. I remember one summer it was so smoky outside that you could hardly breathe.
Yes, that was a hard one for my husband. He was on oxygen. That wasn't that long ago. Well, it was over 5 years ago. So,
Yeah, yeah, I remember that. All across Wyoming, there is a huge bloom of mushrooms because the
yeah,
sun was so dim.
yes,
Yeah, I thought that was interesting.
yes. It's really weird, especially with the wind here. Wind likes to carry it. Some days it'll be really smoky, and then the next day the wind will change directions and it'll be just as clear and crisp. And yeah,
Hmm. Hmm. So, what is your opinion on the Delta 8 variant of cannabis?
I am not really familiar with the Delta 8. Can you?
It's like a synthetic version that is legal pretty much
Oh,
everywhere because of a loophole, really. Because
oh,
cannabis is not legal, they can't really do a whole bunch of research on the Delta 8 and make it illegal because
oh, that's
it is kind of dangerous the way that they alter the structure of it and add other chemicals on top. But that's
yeah,
just my
I don't.
opinion.
Yeah, if they're putting chemicals on it, no, it's not.
Yeah,
It's not pure.
because
It's not healthy.
it wouldn't be Delta 8 if they weren't adding other chemicals onto it. That's a
Yeah.
man-made, molecule.
Okay. Yeah. No, I don't. Man needs to stay away from
Exactly.
trying to make things better their way and leave it to God and God's plant and let us go from there. Don't add chemicals, don't add pesticides or whatever. Just let us grow the way that we should grow. Well, it needs to grow. Don't. add anything to it.
Yeah, I
God
agree.
knew what he was doing when he made the plant.
I agree. I agree. So we're going to go ahead and take one last commercial break, and then we'll be right back.
Listening to my heartbeat pound as daylight fades away. A haunting old familiar sound. The guns go silent and I pray. I'm reading all your letters. I can't get you off my mind. Smoke the day's last cigarette. Thankful I'm alive. Mine's not to wonder why. It's just to do or die. Mine's not to wonder why. It's just to do or die. Helmet for my pillow. I rest on broken glass. Only heaven knows how long can this all last. I lived another day, but trouble's all around. The guns have fallen silent tonight, but the silence is so loud. Mine's not to wonder why. It's just to do or die. Mine's not to wonder why. It's just to do or die. I look up at the stars. Through smoke I see the moon. And I wonder where you are at home tonight. If you can see it too. Another burning city lights the fires in the night. I lie to myself and say that I'm not afraid to die. This war is taking me so far from you. And if we meet again, I'll hold you close and never let you go. But until then, mine's not to wonder why. It's just to do or die. Mine's not to wonder why. It's just to do or die. Mine's not to wonder why. It's just to do or die.
And welcome back to the podcast. Wow,
Yeah.
what a powerful song. I don't think I've heard that one before.
Yeah, I wasn't listening. Sorry.
I was listening. It was pretty good. I have not heard that one before. It gave me goosebumps. All
Cool.
right.
That's always
So,
a good song when it does that.
what was the one thing that got you into cannabis advocacy?
My husband and what I experienced and went through with my husband. You know, we never did marijuana before, and I did it in high school, but he was never ever did marijuana until he ran out of options with his pain medication. And when going through something like that, my husband had a heart attack with a four-way bypass, and three of the four failed. So he had one artery to his heart that was working for 15 and a half years. The
Wow.
last 4.5, after they took away the pain meds, of course, that sent his heart into fits and was not stressed his heart way too much. And I'm sure that over time that's what, because his heart just gave out. But what I witnessed with my husband, and the first time that we took marijuana, and he started laughing. He says, I can't believe this works. And he hadn't laughed in months. He was in so much pain, and he was laughing and having a good time. And to boot, it was our anniversary, so it was great. And yeah, there's no way that you can tell me that it doesn't work. You know, I witnessed it.
Yeah. And I think people have so many strong emotions about cannabis. People really fall in love with it. And it's not fair for it to be illegal. It's not.
You know, we live in a free country. Why don't we have free choice?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, and it should be a person's free right, free choice, you know, to choose what they want for medical pain relief. And medical, yeah, it does wonders for blood sugars as well.
Yeah. And I think that that's what the founding fathers had in mind. Because they weren't the ones who outlawed it.
I believe you're correct. Yeah. Everybody in past history has used it. Well, pretty much. I mean, it's got a significant history to it, you know.
Yeah. And people were doing all kinds of stuff, you know. And it's important to weed through the bad drugs and only
Oh,
allow the good
definitely.
drugs.
Definitely. You know, we don't, I know that the cocaine started for medicinal relief too. So did opioids
Yeah.
or opium, you know, and all that. And yeah, for medical purposes, it'd be great if you could calm it down so it doesn't kill somebody, or adding chemicals to it so it doesn't kill anybody, you know, is not the good thing to do. It needs to be natural.
Yeah. And I think as Americans, we're very good at, you know, protecting our freedoms. But at the same time, we cannot protect our right to have cannabis. And
And
that's
that's
kind
a
of strange to
shame.
me.
Yeah, that's a shame.
We're supposed to be the ones who learn from the past.
Exactly. But how can we learn from the past if you make it illegal to where we can't obtain it, so that we can learn more and educate ourselves more?
Mm-hmm. And I think that, you know, what would be the next step to making cannabis, medical cannabis in Wyoming?
Wow, that would be a hard one. Get rid of the people who don't who who don't go for it. Um, you know, if they would put it on the ballot, that right there would tell
Yeah.
them everything they would need to know right there. Is give the voters a choice, give them a voice,
Yeah.
you
And
know?
I think that education is key. We
Oh,
need to teach
definitely. Yeah.
people, and especially the newer generation, people
Yes.
like me, younger folks, because
Well,
The future is in our hands.
Yes. And marijuana is not like it was back in my day. It's a lot different because a lot of people have experimented and have learned and done different things to make it better. It's not, I don't know, it was different back then. I don't know, it's hard to say. It works more for medicinal purposes for me than anything else.
Yeah, I think that over time it's just only going to get stronger and stronger, and we need to tell people that there are different levels to it, and you need to not freak out.
Yeah, exactly. We need to get Trump to reschedule it.
Yeah, but I don't think he will, because he's a Republican, and there's so many Republicans that he counts on their votes that don't want cannabis because of religious reasons.
Oh, brother. I'm sorry. Religious reasons? That's kind of off the wall, but I guess so.
I mean, that's what they say.
For
It
religious
doesn't make
reasons.
sense. They think
I would
that,
go right back and say, you know what? You look it up in Genesis and God will tell you that he made it.
yeah, they don't like how teenagers get a hold of it and they make poor decisions. But I think teenagers get a hold of alcohol, tobacco, all sorts of drugs.
Not that many teenagers are going for the cannabis anymore. They're, I see a lot of stories and ads or surveys that say that today's teens are not into the marijuana like they used to be. They're not smoking it like people think they are.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
I think that's because a lot of them can only get their hands on the synthetic versions of it, because cannabis is not legal. So they can only really go to the gas station and pick up whatever they have there, and it's not healthy for them. So they're having a bad experience with it. They're having health problems, permanent health problems. And of course that's going to make someone not do it.
Yeah. Yeah, the stuff, the synthetic I can't even speak. Synthetic stuff is not good at all. We need to just not even, they shouldn't have even allowed it for that purpose, because people are getting sick. They are smoking it and getting lung damage, when if they were to smoke the natural stuff, it would have been much better.
Yeah, I think so.
I agree.
Well, it's been an amazing journey with you here today. Is there anything you would like to end the podcast on?
I really think that Wyoming needs to wake up and, at least, if nothing else, do medical marijuana for those who need it, those who want to use that versus opioids. And that's about it. I mean, too many people are getting in trouble for seeking medicine that helps them better than opioids, and that's a shame.
Yeah.
We need to change policies. We need to get it legalized. We need to get better educated.
I agree. And that's the podcast, folks. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, you're welcome.